You know, this is right in our backyard, and most of us have no clue what's going on. And it's really important to find out. And one of the people here is someone who's really helping us find out, and that's Nicolas Chagnon. And he's a PhD candidate at UH in the sociology department, and he's an instructor, and he had a recent article with 2 other authors on police brutality in Civil Beat, which just brought me up and said, finally, somebody's speaking out and has this great article where everybody can see it with all the research and the numbers and that kind of thing that you know, a lot of more people can believe. There are copies of it over there if you want a copy, and if you haven't seen it, please get it before tonight's over. So Nicholas, Nick.
Well, hi everyone. As was just said, I have the opportunity to both teach and learn right up the road at Saunders Hall. My main area of expertise is actually in journalism. I study crime in the media, but recent events, including the recent case with Sergeant Cachola and the others involving the shooting of 2 unarmed civilians in Waikiki, spurred 2 UH professors and I to conduct a little bit of research on issues surrounding HPD. So our research kind of brought out 2 main concerns. One had to do with the use of force, and the other had to do with just general police accountability. Relating to use of force, figures for the number of fatal police shootings in Honolulu over the past 5 years they're somewhat staggering. HPD has shot and killed 11 people over this time period. Compared to the mainland, that's 4 times the national average. Hawaii has a relatively low level of violent crime. For example, our murder rate is 213% lower than the mainland's. This is probably because we have strict gun control laws and very low levels of gun violence. However, because of this, there's little to explain why HPD would shoot more often than their mainland counterparts. In fact, you'd probably expect them to shoot a lot less. When we looked at these shootings individually, we could see that a large proportion of them involved the shooting of motorists fleeing from the police. The police generally claim that the motorists drove at them and tried to injure or kill police officers, but since they're the only ones telling the story, you might question whether these accounts are totally truthful. These concerns over use of force dovetail with concerns about general police accountability. In Honolulu, we have the Honolulu Police Commission. It's a 7-member board appointed by the mayor. Among other things, they appoint the chief and they listen to public complaints against the police. The composition of the board is quite interesting. In cities like Seattle and New York, they have lawyers with experience in things like the prosecutor's office, public defender's office, from the ACLU. They have community organizers and activists. They have criminal justice experts. Honolulu has a restaurateur, a life coach, an executive from the hotel industry, and a carpenter's union officer. None of them have any significant experience in criminal justice or law. One might conclude, without a hint of irony, that the composition of the HPC is more close to a booster club than an organization tasked with adjudicating serious criminal justice measures and ensuring public safety. I'd argue that their purpose, at least their unstated purpose, is really just to create the perception of legitimacy and oversight, while not really bothering the police or critically assessing what they're doing. Some of the actions of the HPC support my conclusion. Over 5 years, HPC found only 6 out of 148 complaints of use of excessive force to be based in fact. That is roughly consistent with other cities' boards. However, it doesn't really seem to pass the laugh test to me, that only 3.4% of the people willing to make a complaint against a police officer are making truthful complaints. You might even look at the documented witness resistance testifying against Sergeant Cachola recently as evidence of the intimidating nature of having to make a complaint against the police. HPC also has a transparency problem. They conduct their police disciplinary business behind closed doors. they publish a report that gives aggregate findings, but they don't give any facts of individual cases, something that other cities do. Excuse me. Essentially, the process is a black box coated in a smiley veneer. Finally, as the reporting on the control case is brought to light, even when police discipline is meted out, it tends to be, to say the least, lenient. No police officers have been fired for domestic violence over the past 13 years, though HPD admitted publicly that they investigate about 50 cases of criminal domestic violence complaints against their officers every year. Just to put it in context, studies have found that police are about 2 to 4 times more likely than the general public to engage in domestic violence. More generally, of 512 disciplinary cases over these 13 years, 33 resulted in criminal convictions, and only 5 officers lost their jobs. How many of us would retain our jobs if we were convicted of a crime? Considering this leniency, is it really that surprising that the police officers act as if they're above the law? Moving forward, we might consider a couple of things. HPC should be overhauled. It should be given a larger budget. Really, that's to say it should be given an actual budget. It should be constituted so that the members have a significant level of criminal justice experience and expertise. Also, an external review should be conducted to determine whether HPD policies and training fit nationally recognized best practices. Right now, it seems that they surely don't. For example, HPD cadets get about 3 hours of domestic violence training, something which is one of the most routine things that they have to respond to in their jobs. Third, the public and the state might consider the power and influence of SHOPO, the Police Officers Union. I work as an advocate for graduate student workers' rights, and I'm somebody who's generally very supportive of unions. But I think that it's important to acknowledge that a totally self-interested union with too much power can wreak almost as much havoc as a totally self-interested corporation with too much power. We might even look at what's happened in California as an example of this. The California Correction Officers Union has an enormous amount of money and influence in state politics there. They've used this influence and money to push policies like 3 strikes and all kinds of mandatory minimums. They've fundamentally shaped state penal policy there, and they've nearly driven the state bankrupt. Just with unions, just as anything else, too much power corrupts. Finally, in addition to reading my own article, I'd recommend that if anybody wants to really learn more about this, that you follow the work of Nick Grube, especially his series, In the Name of the Law, and follow what's going on. Mahalo.